Okay, we're now recording. So today we are going to start with contracts part 3. Let me just pull that up. And today we'll do both contracts 3 and agency. Although I doubt we'll finish agency probably. Okay, so in the past lesson in contracts 2, we talked about things like capacity to contract. You know, we already knew from contracts 1, what do you need? What are the 5 things to make a contract? Offer, acceptance, consideration, intention, and certainty. For each of those, I need you to know the definition, the test, and some additional information. For offer, I need you to know the counter offer, or void and voidable, or bilateral and unilateral, or things like the Lonergan v. Skolnick rule, the sole purpose test, like is it just meant for one, is the offer just meant for one party? I need you also to know the Lefkowitz rule, an offer must be clear, definite, and precise, just some of these additional things. But those are the big 3, right? The main test, which is a subjective reasonable person test, and then the additional, the sole purpose test from Lonergan v. Skolnick, the clear, definite, and precise rule from Lefkowitz. And I don't really care if you remember the name Lonergan v. Skolnick or Lefkowitz. It's good if you do. I mean, I will give you an extra point because you're telling me where it came from, but it's not, you're not going to lose a point if you don't know it. For acceptance, we talked about the objective test, the fly on the wall. We talked about the definition. The big rule there was the mirror rule. That's the big one. And then there's also things like the postal rule, the receipt theory. I think there were probably a couple of others. I think Battle of the Forms, maybe 1 or 2 others. And then we talked about consideration. For that, the test is really easy. It's just what did the parties give each other? But you do need to know that consideration must be sufficient but need not be adequate, that it has to be valuable to the parties, but it doesn't have to be equal to each other. It could be something very expensive for something not expensive, as long as it's valuable to both parties. In addition to the test and the definition, I needed you to know, what else? There's a moral consideration. There is past consideration. There is part payment. There is forbearance, which is a promise not to do something. There is another one. I guess then we got into promissory estoppel, which is, anybody remember? Somebody want to tell me what's promissory estoppel, also called detrimental reliance?
I think is when you do a promise and you write down this promise, is stand as a contract.
Well, I mean, if I say I promise to give you my bicycle and I write it down, do I have to give you my bicycle?
If you stay as a promise, no, because the law doesn't want you or force you to respect your promise. But when you promise, it becomes a contract. No, when you promise, it becomes a contract.
If I just promise you something, I promise you my bicycle, that's not a contract. Even if I write it down, I could engrave it into stone. It doesn't matter. It's not a contract. Junpyo, if I promise Florian my bicycle and we write that down on a piece of paper, you know, I, David Warner, promise Florian my bicycle, and I sign it and he signs it. Why is that not a contract?
Because Florian might not be giving you something back.
Good. So there's a lack of consideration.
Clear.
Florian's not giving me anything.
And you have also to give a date and to give a value. It has to be clear, precise.
Yeah, but if there's no consideration, we're not moving on to intention or certainty because the contract has already failed. I mean, you're saying the contract needs certainty. I mean, yeah, it does, but if there's no consideration, we don't even need to get beyond that.
So Florian just need to give like deposit.
Well, a deposit wouldn't necessarily be consideration. A deposit would just give him time to consider whether or not he wants to purchase my bicycle.
Basically,
At
you have
some
to
point,
give
that time
an
will be up.
offer.
I did. I said I'll give you my bicycle for $1,000.
The date is missing, like until which date?
That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if there's no consideration.
Gotcha.
These things come in order. Offer, acceptance, consideration, intention, and certainty. That's the order. First, we look, is there an offer? If there is, then we move on to acceptance. If there's no offer, there's no reason to continue analyzing. Then we look at acceptance. Was there acceptance? If there was, then we go on to consideration. In this case with you and I, there was no consideration. We stop there. There's no reason to analyze farther. Consideration says, what did the parties give each other? It's got to be something valuable. It could be something small. I can give you my bicycle and you can give me your hairbrush. Maybe. If I want it, it's got value. Depends why I want it. But as long as it's something with value, it just can't be like $1 or 1 RMB. That's nominal. That has no real value. You know, it can't be something that's garbage. You know, you can't just take a pen cap and say, David, I'll give you this pen cap. Why? I mean, why do I want this? It doesn't have any real value unless it does to me, but it has to be real. So we learned that. We learned the promissory estoppel rule was it is possible. This is similar to forbearance. And in forbearance, which we already learned about, that's a promise not to do something, like a promise that I won't sue you, or a promise that I won't tell anybody your secret. You know, that's our promise I won't work for anybody else for 6 months or whatever. The promise that I won't do something that's good consideration. But then it's also possible that you promise me something. So let's say I promise Florian my bicycle. And because of that, Florian accepts a job that is on the other side of Shanghai. And he needs a bicycle to get there. And then I don't give him my bicycle. Now, Florian's in a bad situation because I promised him my bicycle and that's why he accepted the job. Now, if I don't give him my bicycle, it's unfair. And in that sense, Florian did give me something. He gave me his reliance. He relied on my promise. So if you remember, promissory estoppel has 3 parts. One person makes a promise to the other person. Person B relies on the promise. Then person A must keep the promise if that is the only way to avoid unfairness or injustice. And of course, the example with the bicycle isn't a very good example. As I said in class, this most often happens when you're offered a job somewhere. So if you're offered a job and you say yes, and then you take your children out of school, you pack everything up, you sell your apartment, you buy an airplane ticket, then the job cannot refuse to give you a good faith chance to work there because they made you an offer, you relied on it. And now if they break the offer, you will suffer. It's the only way to avoid injustice. Anything else in consideration? That's a bunch of rules already. One more, I think we had the pre-existing duty rule, which says if you already have a responsibility to do something, like I already have a responsibility to teach, that cannot be consideration for a new contract. I already have a contract with Donghua that says I will teach you and they will pay me. So I already have a contract. If I wanted to use this I will teach promise, I can't, it's already been used. So I would need a new promise. Then we talked about intention. We know the definition, the test is the objective test. This is where we talked about the just kidding rule. What happens if one party is just kidding? We looked at Lucy v. Zemmer, where somebody promised a farm to another guy at a very cheap price, but he was just kidding, but it didn't matter because the other party believed him and acted on this promise. We talked about intoxication. What happens if somebody is drunk or high when they make a contract? Can they still have capacity? Then we talked about social contracts versus commercial contracts. And then finally, we talked about certainty of terms. And we said, again, it is an objective test. We need to make sure all the terms are clear. And we talked about that. And we talked also about requirement contracts and output contracts, where the quantity may not be written because it's not known at the present time, but it is clear. Can somebody give me an example? Tell me, what is a requirement contract? Carlotta, are you there? Carlotta, are you there? I had this problem last class too. I can't tell if you're here or not. Harry, you're there. I
Hello.
can see you.
Yeah.
What is a requirement contract?
It's like an agreement to like supply the buyer for as much as they need. And I think in exchange of like, they don't go anywhere else to buy something.
Okay, it's an agreement. They won't go anywhere else to buy this product. Why? If you have a requirement contract with me, what are you promising to do?
There is like an exclusive clause. This is a particularity.
Well, yes, it is exclusive, but an output and a requirement both have a level of exclusivity. Harry, what are you promising to do? Let's say you have a requirement contract with me for spinach.
He promised to only receive spinach.
Wait, Florian, let Harry answer, please.
Okay.
So I'm supplying you as much spinach as you could possibly need.
Right. Good. So whatever I require, right? It's a requirement contract. So if I'm buying spinach from you, it's requirement. Whatever I require, I buy from you. We don't know how much, we'll know later. Now, Florian, what's an output contract?
An output contract is a contract where the requirement is on the quality. So there is the QC consideration.
No, it's not about quality. This is another exclusivity contract. It's not about quality. Output and requirement are opposites. So with requirement, I am buying all the spinach that my restaurant needs from Harry, right? It's requirement, I'm buying everything I require from Harry. That makes sense, Florian?
Gotcha.
Gotcha. So, okay, I'm buying everything I require from Harry. That's a requirement. What's an output contract? I'm buying everything that Harry puts out. All the spinach that he makes, I buy. It's not about quality. It's just about exclusivity. So if I'm buying all of the spinach that Harry's farm puts out, what that means is I am the exclusive distributor. Now, maybe the quality's high, maybe the quality's low, but It's not about that, it's about exclusivity. I'm the only seller. Now with requirement, I'm not the only buyer of spinach. I'm gonna buy, or he will buy all that he needs from me. And I might sell to other people also, but I know I will always have a certain amount of sales. I will always have this exclusive deal that I supply to Harry. He's not going to buy spinach from anybody else. Other people might buy from me also, but Harry's not buying from anybody else. He's only buying from me. So it's about him buying as much as he needs versus him buying as much as I produce. So requirements versus outputs. Okay, and that's pretty much contracts 1. In contracts 2, we talked about capacity. We talked about what happens if a party makes a mistake, that it makes the contract voidable. We talked about basic remedies for contract, which are damages and rescission. We talked about what happens if somebody commits duress or undue influence, if somebody forces another person to sign a contract or pressures them into signing a contract. And then we talked about unconscionability. What happens if a contract is unfair? Extremely, extremely unfair. Looks like some people are having trouble getting in. Caitlin, are you here now?
Yes, I am. I got in.
Okay, Carlotta still can't get in, I think.
No, I'm here.
Oh, you are now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Caitlin and Carlotta, it seems like last class, both of you had problems getting in. It's too bad. Okay, so anyway, if there are no questions, let's begin and finish contract 3 today. So this one's short. We're going to talk about how do you end a contract. That's called discharge. How do you discharge a contract? Then what are the remedies if you break a contract? If you want to sue somebody for breaking a contract, what can the court give you? We'll talk about both direct and equitable remedies. And then finally, we'll touch on statutory rules of time at the end. So I am in love with a girl named Bridget Palmer. She is really sweet and crazy hot. You, Nicola, owe me $80 and you don't have the money. So you tell me that you promise to get Bridget to marry me if I forgive the debt. You'll be, this is a matchmaker contract.
Wait,
You're gonna
for
be my
$80?
Yeah, dude, come on. So you're gonna be my matchmaker
Okay.
for $80. Now I am very happy about this, I agree. And then later that day, I meet Bridget Palmer on the road and I call her bad names. And I say, you're gonna be my wife, whether you like it or not. Nicola's gonna make you marry me. And of course, she's not happy about this and she refuses to marry me. So Nicola, I sue you because you broke your promise. Am I gonna win?
Let's see. So you promised me give me $80 or no more debt, and I promise you to
Force this girl to marry me.
force this girl to marry you. Yeah, we have two things valuable here, but I was so complicated because you did something that's not helping me to help you.
Well, I mean, you're missing part of the point here. Can you force a girl to marry me?
No, I cannot. But I don't know. Because here I don't know how is my. It's not saying I'm forced her to marry you.
It says you're gonna get her to marry me. You promised to get Bridget to marry me.
I cannot.
Caitlin?
I think
Caitlin, can he promise to get Bridget to marry me?
No, don't think so.
He can. You know why? Because this case is from 1599. And in 1599, he could.
1599.
now he cannot, right? Now he cannot, right?
Of course not.
Okay.
No, course
Actually,
not.
depends in which country, actually, I guess.
Well, maybe there are countries in the world where this would be legal, but certainly no countries that have a developed rule of law would ever say a contract for a human being is possible. That is unacceptable. But this is a case from 1599, so it's a
Because
little
it's
older.
human, right? So maybe in the, not Arabic, but if you use like the Quran as a law, maybe.
Well, it's we
No,
don't say
even
the
now they cannot
Quran
accept
as a
that.
law. We
No.
would say Sharia law, but no, I don't think under Sharia law you could do that.
You
As a
cannot do that.
As a
No,
father.
no, I mean,
Oh yeah,
there's
you cannot do that even as a father. You cannot do that now.
yeah, there's a difference between law and tradition. And there are things in very traditional cultures, China included, where kids will definitely do what their parents tell them to do, but that doesn't mean it's a written law by the government. So, but Nicola made a really good point, which is why I bring this up, because this case, obviously, this case is too old to be very relevant, but it does have one important point, which is I made a contract with Nicola, and then I made it very difficult for Nicola to keep the contract. If in this case in 1599, I didn't do anything bad, would Bridget have married me? Probably. I hindered, and that's the key word here, hindrance. I hindered Nicola. And this is still a rule today, that if you make it difficult for someone to complete the contract. So for example, let's say that I have a contract with Jordan, and Jordan, your family sells, you sell beer, okay? Your family's a brewery and you sell beer. And I have a contract with you to distribute your beer in Shanghai. And we've made a contract, and the contract says that I will distribute 1,000 cases per month. And you, every time you deliver the beer, you call me, you say, David, I'm going to deliver the beer. And I say, oh man, I can't do it Wednesday. Can you do it Thursday? How about Thursday night, 8 o'clock to 8:15? That's the only time. And then I call you up and I say, oh man, I'm sorry, I changed the time again. How about Friday morning? And I just keep changing it. And I'm making it really, really difficult for you. And then at the end of the week or the month, you were not able to deliver the beer because I made it so difficult for you. And then I say, Jordan, I'm breaking the contract because you never delivered me my beer. I'm going to sue you. But you see the problem, it wasn't your fault. You tried to deliver the beer again and again and again. You tried. I'm the one who made it difficult. I hindered you. Well, what happens when one person makes it difficult? Why would I do that? You know, Jordan, can you think of a reason that maybe I would have hindered you from delivering the beer?
The reason that you don't keep the time, you just keep changing.
Yeah, but why am I doing that? Can you think of a reason why I might be doing that?
Maybe you
anybody-
cannot pay. Maybe you don't have the money to pay, you know, to accomplish the contract. So you kind of.
Okay, so then
I
why
think-
don't I just tell him I don't have the money? I got to break the contract.
Because you're gonna
Because
lose.
Jordan, why?
I said that you're gonna lose because you sign contract and you break the contract.
That's it. So you're going to sue me. Now, it could be because I don't have the money. It could be because I don't have the stores or the contacts. Maybe I promised you, and this happens a lot. I promised you, Jordan, that I would sell 1,000 cases of your beer, and I was lazy. I just didn't go to the stores. I didn't make the deals. And now, you know, I thought I had lots of time, and so I stayed home playing Xbox. And I kept saying, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. Well, all of a sudden, you're supposed to deliver the beer. And I'm like, oh my God, I never made contracts with these other stores. I forget about this. I don't want to do it, but I don't want Jordan to sue me. So I'm just going to keep making your life difficult until you give up. We can't have that in the law, right? So there are, and this case was Blandford v. Andrews. It was held for plaintiff. You know, this is 1599. They said you did have to make this girl marry you, even though he insulted her. But of course, the results would be different today. So there are 7 ways to end a contract. We don't use the word hindrance very much anymore. Instead, we use this word, frustration. If Jordan is trying to deliver the beer to me and I keep frustrating him by changing the time so that he can never deliver it, it's the same thing as hindrance. We just call it frustration. So let's go through these. These are the ways to end a contract. So the first way to end a contract, performance. I have a contract with Jordan to buy 1,000 cases of beer. Okay, I take the beer, I give you the money, done. That's performance. You do your part, I do my part. We're both done. Now, what about part performance and substantial performance? Well, those are a little more complicated. So let's wait on those for a second. Parties' agreement. Let's say that, Jordan, we're good friends and I promise to buy this beer from you and we sign a contract. And I call you and I say, listen, Jordan, I'm really sorry. I just didn't do the work. Would it be okay if we just didn't have this contract? Is it okay, Jordan, if you just say, yeah, it's okay, and we rip up the contract? Can you and I agree to terminate the contract?
Yeah, if both sides sit down and talk about the ending,
Sure.
that could be.
Sure. We sit down, we talk about it. You agree, I agree. We shake hands, we rip up the contract. Fine. That's parties' agreement. Frustration, we'll talk about. Number 6, breach of contract, right? So number 1 is you keep the contract. Number 4 is you agree to terminate the contract. Number 6, one of us breaks the contract. That's it. You can always break a contract. Now let's talk about the little more complicated ones, 2, 3, 5, and 7. So the difference between substantial and part performance, the difference is part performance is quantifiable. It's about numbers. And substantial performance is not quantifiable. It's not about numbers. So what do I mean? Well, let's say I have this contract with Jordan to buy 1,000 cases of beer. And Jordan, I'm going to pay you $100 per case. $100 per case, 1,000 cases, $100,000. Cool? Now, Jordan, you send me half. You send me 500 cases. Now, we already know that the contract is now voidable. If I want to accept those, I can. But if I want to say, hey man, no, we made a contract for 1,000, you can't change anything. That's a counter offer. I could do that too. Does that make sense? I need to make sure you understand that logic. Hey, Aruni. Aruni, does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
The excitement is overwhelming. So what if, though, I decide to accept Jordan's 500 cases? But I call you, Jordan, and I say, listen, man, I'm going to take the 500 cases, but I'm not paying you anything because you promised me 1,000. You didn't give me 1,000. So I'm not paying for any of it. Can I do that?
No, you cannot, because
Why not?
you can. If you don't want to take it, you don't have to take it all. But when you accept to take the half that you are agreed,
And how much do I have to pay you?
to pay me for the half that I
Correct.
send it to you.
And that is part performance. It is quantifiable. There are numbers. I had a contract with you for a number of things. you gave me some of them. You gave me 5, I pay for 5. You gave me 10, I pay for 10. You gave me half, I pay for half.
So basically, there is no compensation for the lack of the supply.
No, I always have the right to make the contract voidable. So I could say, hey man, you know, this isn't okay. You promised me 1,000 and then you sent half. I don't want half. That's a counter offer. Take it back. And in fact, Jordan has now broken the contract.
So you can sue him. That's what you want
So
to say?
right, I could sue him. That is where I could get some sort of damages if I needed it. Because he made, by sending me half, he has made me a counter offer, which I do not accept. And the original contract for 1,000 is now broken.
Okay, so I have a question. Don't you think like if there is this kind of opportunity, you cannot renegotiate the contract rather than counter offer then sue the person in order to get money?
There's no such thing as renegotiation.
All right.
That's not a thing. That's like an English word, but it's not a law word.
Oh, there is no law for renegotiation?
No, that's like re-murder. You can't
Usually, for
re-murder
example,
someone.
Jordan is my artist. He finished his contract, or is actually he didn't finish. He's at the end of the contract. We're trying to renegotiate in either for.
But you're
renew the
not.
contract
But
or-
you're not actually negotiating. What's happening is you are negotiating the next contract.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean.
So you can say we are negotiating again, we're renegotiating, but it's for a new contract. The old contract cannot be changed. Any change is a counter offer.
Okay.
Unless it's something super, super small. Like he promised that he would send it in gray boxes, but the boxes are actually black cardboard. I mean, who cares? I'm throwing away the cardboard anyway. So it doesn't make a difference. But anything that is substantial, he can't change anything. Now that gets to this idea of substantial performance. Let's change the example. It's not about beer. I have a contract with Junpyo, and Junpyo has a construction company. And Junpyo, I have a contract with you to renovate my apartment. So you're going to fix the kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, the bedroom, you know, all of it pretty much. You're going to renovate it, take out the walls, paint it again, you know, clean up the floors, put in the wood again, everything. And you finish my bathroom and the living room, but the kitchen is not finished and the dining room is only half done. And then suddenly you have some sort of financial problem and you can't finish the job. Do I have to pay you, Junpyo, for the work you did, or can I pay you nothing? Junpyo, first, did you break the contract?
Well, first, I think I did break the contract.
Okay, so let's just start there. You and I had a contract for you to fix the kitchen, the bathroom, the bedroom, the living room, all of it. And you finished the bathroom and the living room, but not the bedroom and the kitchen. So you didn't finish the job. So you broke the contract. I could sue you. But do I have to pay you for the work that you did? Or can I pay you nothing?
I think you should pay me. I think we had a similar example like before.
Sure.
I think we have discussed about it.
We had a similar example before when we talked about illegality and somebody who is a lawyer or an architect doing work for someone, and then they did not want to pay the person because they didn't have a valid license. But they did have to pay them. And I don't know if anybody remembers the Latin that I told you. Anybody remember? in quantum meruit. In quantum meruit means you can always get the value of your work. For the same reason that I need to pay Jordan for half of the order of the beer, I need to pay Junpyo, except the difference is with the beer, I can count that. 500, not 1,000, I give him half, right? We can count it. With the example with Junpyo, how do we count a bathroom and a bedroom, but not a kitchen and a living room? And we can't, it's not exactly half. It's not 5/8, what is it, 0.6? I mean, there's no way to count it exactly. So it's substantial performance, which means you still get paid, right? Both part and substantial mean the same thing. They both mean you did some of the job and you get paid some of the money. But with part performance, we can measure exactly how much of the contract you did. With substantial performance, it's uncountable. It can't be counted exactly, but you still do get paid. Who's going to decide how much? The court. I mean, you and I will try to negotiate a little bit. You'll say, David, give me 50%. And I'll say, no way, man, I'm going to give you 10%. You say, come on, okay, 40%. And if we cannot have an agreement, then one of two things will happen. Either you and I will go to court, or you and I will go to arbitration. And we will learn a little more about arbitration later. But that is what's commonly done, where we get someone to help us resolve our conflict. And we could have it be legal or not legal. But it's good because it's cheaper and quicker and less formal than the court. Let's look at force majeure. What is force majeure?
It's
Anybody
like
know?
a natural, for example, right now, coronavirus, I cannot supply. It's like a natural, it's outside of my hand. It's like a natural or physical.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if the coronavirus fits, it might. But
Yeah.
it could be certainly something that is like a hurricane or a typhoon or a rainstorm or lightning or thunder, potentially fire, certainly fire started by lightning. Anything like that is a force majeure, an act of God. Okay, so now let's talk about frustration, because frustration is not an act of God, but there's a variety of kinds. So, where did I put that first one? Oh, okay. So frustration. There's a change in circumstances after the contract was made, which is not the fault of either of the parties, but makes the contract impossible to perform or no longer commercially relevant. So it's different a little bit from hindrance. With hindrance, I made it very hard for Jordan to complete the contract because I refused to answer the telephone or whatever I did to make his life difficult. Frustration's a little different. Frustration says there's something that's changed and it's not really his fault and it's not really my fault, but it's also not God who did this. Let's say that I have a contract to buy 1,000 cases of beer from Jordan, and I will distribute the beer in Shanghai. And then the Chinese government makes a new law that foreigners cannot sell beer. Now, that is not God. God didn't make that rule. People made that rule. But it's not Jordan's fault and it's not my fault. It's not the fault of either of the parties. But the contract is impossible, or even if I buy the beer, there's no commercial purpose because I can't sell it anymore. So the contract would now be frustrated. Let's look at a few examples of frustration. Let's look at this first. I play guitar. I was hired to play with a local band, and the contract said I would play 7 nights a week for 2 years. However, recently I've been very depressed and I'm afraid I might hurt myself. So I go to see the doctor and he says, listen, you have to rest. You can't play guitar more than 3 nights a week. The band fires me. I sue them for wrongful dismissal because I say the contract was frustrated. What do you think, Aruni? Aruni, frustration is there's a change in circumstances and it's not the fault of either person, but now the contract is impossible. Has there been a change in circumstances here?
Yeah, he couldn't play anymore.
And is it the fault of either person?
No.
Okay. So would you call this frustration?
Yeah.
Good. So yes, the contract was frustrated, right? It was a change. Nobody was hindering. Now, what if I had a contract to play in a band? Aruni, you have a band, and I made a contract with you to play 7 days a week. And as part of this, of course, I need to practice. And I never practice. I refuse to practice. And then when I come to rehearsal, I don't know the songs. And I say, oh, sorry, I don't know the songs. You have to release me from my contract. Is that frustration?
No, that's
Why
not
not?
frustration. Because it's not impossible to do. If he had practiced, then he would be able to do it.
Sure. And it's the fault of me for doing that. Frustration has to be not the fault of either party. If I didn't practice, that's my fault. So what would you call that situation?
Breach of contract.
Yes, I think you could say that. But also I would call that hindrance. I am making it very, very hard for you to keep this contract. Now you can sue me for hindrance because it's a form of breach of contract. I make a contract with you to rent your Airbnb apartment for 1 day to watch the Shanghai Marathon, and I give you a deposit on the apartment, let's say Min. Okay, Min, so I give you this deposit to rent your apartment, and then the marathon is canceled due to a hurricane, and I'm not going to use the apartment, so I refuse to give you the rest of the money. I want my deposit back. Will I get my deposit back?
No, you cannot.
I think yes.
Yes? So, okay, we have different opinions. Min, tell me why you think yes.
Because the hurricane is not your fault.
Okay, certainly that's true. It's not your fault and it's not my fault. Jordan, why do you say no? Was that, yeah, it was Jordan who said no, right? Jordan, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
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 I said it's not because Airbnb therefore that's frustration comes from hurricane. So he cannot give you back your deposit because he might rent it to some other people, but he keep that for you.
That is true. That is true. Both of those arguments have logic, right? It's true on the one hand that Min kept the apartment for me. She gave up the opportunity to rent it to someone else. And therefore I did pay the deposit and maybe I shouldn't get it back. But it's also true, as Min said, that this hurricane wasn't my fault and it wasn't her fault. What the court said is that this is an implied condition. There is an implied condition in the contract. So first of all, yes, you can get the deposit back. Because I rented this apartment to watch the marathon. There was a condition, and she knew that I was renting it to watch the marathon. We both understood that this was going to happen because This didn't happen. Therefore, there was no reason for me to rent the apartment. It was implied in our contract that this was going to happen.
Sir David, it's just because there is a condition, right? If there is no condition and just like someone booked a Airbnb and the people who rented for him like didn't know about the condition, so it
So let's
cannot-
say that I rent an Airbnb because I want to see my sister graduate from university. And then, of course, it's your Airbnb. You don't know my sister. You don't know anything about that. And then the school cancels the graduation for a week. And I say, I don't want to pay you the deposit because they canceled the graduation. No, then I have to pay you. Because even though there is a condition, there's no way you would have known about the condition. And that gets us to that very important rule we've learned of, was it foreseeable?
But sir, for this happened to me, but they pay me back.
They did or didn't?
They did pay me back. Because
They
I
gave
was
you your deposit back. Well, that's good.
no, half of my money, because I was in Kuala Lumpur. I took hotel for 1 week. Then I heard that China is going to close the border. I just stayed 3 days. When I want to sign out, they told me, what's the reason? I said, China will close after tomorrow, so I want to leave now. And then I didn't ask them for the deposit, and then they gave me back
Well, that's
deposit
good.
and half of the days that I didn't stay.
I mean, that's nice of them to do that.
Yeah, this is called platinum.
I mean, I think, those are cases, obviously the problem in those situations is you're not going to stay there to sue them. Certainly
Yeah.
not for $3. I mean, this is a case from 1903, and we're talking about 25-pound deposit in 1903. 25 pounds was quite a lot of money. Because this was a very expensive thing to watch Edward VII become king, but then the ceremony was not held.
I have a question about the implied condition. If the implied condition is out of your end and like you have no control over it, like for example, them, I don't understand why the landlord should lose his money, because his game is only willing to make money. Either you take it or not. If anything happened outside of his end and you and him had an agreement, and this agreement is possible, you still can rent it whenever your reason for the rent is. You must pay him, I guess.
What if I wanted to watch the Shanghai Marathon? And, it's the biggest marathon this year in the history of China. So it's a big, big event, and it's very hard to get apartments. And I rent your apartment, and your apartment overlooks the marathon road. So I pay you the deposit, and I go into your apartment, and it turns out you have put bricks in front of the window. There's no window anymore. Can I get my deposit back?
Like I say, it's implied. You never told me this was the reason, right?
You're
I
right.
don't know about this.
I didn't tell you. I also didn't tell you that I want hot water in the bathroom. I did not tell you I want the toilet to work. I didn't tell you I want a floor. I mean, I'd really like a floor. I find it very helpful to stand on. I didn't tell you I want walls. I didn't tell you I want doors to lock.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't tell you I'd like to have oxygen in the room. There's a lot of things I didn't tell you. Where do we draw the line? Should you know that I want a window? Yeah, maybe. If I'm renting it to watch the marathon, I'd be pretty angry. So we have a lot of implied conditions. Now, usually there's no implied condition that you get a window. There is an implied condition that you get hot water. That's implied. You don't have to ask for it. If I went there and there was no hot water and it was the winter, and you said, hey, you never asked for it, no, it doesn't work like that. That's an implied condition of habitability. But in this case, you should have foreseen that this is what I wanted. You have some responsibility here.
David, I wonder if those laws also applied here in China.
They do, although they're not really enforced. So while they exist, if you let's say you went and got a hotel or an Airbnb.
Yeah, I have this situation now. My wife have to go to Beijing like next
And
week,
there's
but
like no hot water.
no, because of the COVID here in Shanghai, in Pudong, maybe she cannot, like the barriers is closed. So, but she already did the reservation. I mean, she did, but she can cancel
Yeah,
without
she
no
should be
problem.
able to cancel
Without
that.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when she did the reservation, she chose like a
Like a no refund.
cancelable. Yeah, with refund, in
Okay.
the trip.
So your question is, what would happen if she did a no refund option?
Yes.
So it depends on the battle of the forms. You'd have to look at the little language that it's at the bottom of the screen, or when it says terms and conditions apply, and you have to click on that, because there is a chance that they would try to say, even due to an unnatural event outside our control, you are agreeing as is to accept the
As
terms of the
is.
contract. They definitely might say that. You have agreed to take the room as is and regardless of force majeure. And now by saying yes, you have contracted away your right to do this. Now there's some things you cannot give away. Like I cannot give away my freedom. I cannot make a contract with you if you commit a crime for me to go to jail instead of you.
Okay.
I don't have the power to give you that.
Mhm.
There are some things I can't contract away, but almost anything I can. As long as you knew what you were doing. That's a big issue if you really didn't know, but you can't say, oh, I didn't click on it. They said
Yeah.
terms and conditions may apply, click here. That was
Is
your
everything
choice.
there? Yeah, I see.
So I rent an office building and I plan to rent the offices to different people and make a profit, and we sign a contract. As soon as I move in, the police invade the apartment building. A better example now would be there's COVID. So I rent this apartment building, I plan to make a profit, rent the apartments out to everybody, we sign a contract, then COVID hits. Now I can't rent it to anybody, so okay, I don't pay you and you sue me. Do I have to pay you? What do you think? Let's go for Isaac. Isaac, I rent this apartment building from you and there's COVID, and so I can't rent the offices to anybody, so I don't pay you. And then you sue me. Do I have to pay you?
I think so.
Why?
Well, because you're still using my property.
Well, but isn't my purpose frustrated? It's no fault of yours or mine that there's COVID.
Right. It's not my fault, neither yours, but
What do you think? So you think yes.
well, like
Anybody
you said,
think?
the plans.
Sorry?
Yes, you can. Said, I think it is frustrating what you said. Like you can't.
Oh, you
rent
think it
out
is
to-
frustrated?
Right.
Anybody think I do have to pay Isaac?
I have a question. What do you mean when you say American police invite? So they occupy. That's what you mean, right?
What? I'm
Just-
sorry, say it again. Invade, that word?
Yeah, invite. They occupy the building. They live in this building, right?
Yes.
So they pay the rent, right?
No.
I
They're,
said
they're the police. They're not paying
what?
anything.
for what I think is you have to give him back
You think I do have to pay him, Jordan? Why?
because why the police invade your place? Because there is some reason.
Well, it has nothing to do with me. It's just like COVID. You're right. First of all, you're right. I do have to pay. Now, this is an old case, 1674. So quite an old case, but still good law, Paradigm v. Jane. So originally the trial court said, oh, you don't have to pay. This is frustration, right? It's not your fault the police came, and it wasn't the police, it was a German prince. So a German prince took over the building. And the landlord sued. You know, and I said, listen, it's not my fault a German prince took over the building. And the landlord said, well, it's not my fault either. So, okay, it's not either of our faults. And the trial court said, cool, frustration. But then on appeal, because, you know, Isaac wants his money, he appealed to the King's Bench, which back then was the Supreme Court. And the King's Bench said, no, this isn't frustration. They said, David has to pay. And they said, they gave an example. They said, think of it this way. Imagine, Isaac, that I decided to buy from you corn. Okay, let's say you're a farmer and you sell corn and you have a field of corn that is going to be harvested. And I say, Isaac, I'd like to buy that field of corn. You harvest it, and then when it's ready, you sell it to me. You say, yes, okay. So I get all the corn, and then nobody wants to buy it this year. Nobody wants corn anymore for whatever reason. So I can't sell the corn. So I say, Isaac, nobody wanted my corn, so I'm not going to pay you. Would that be fair, Isaac?
No.
We wouldn't.
Wouldn't, right? What happened to me? I made a bad business decision. Did I know that that year everybody would be eating wheat instead of corn? Could I have known that? No way. I didn't know that, but it doesn't matter. You, Isaac, and this is what you said the first time, you had something to sell me. And I made a business risk to buy it. And then it was just a bad time. It was bad timing. So that is not frustration. However, what if this happened? I rent a concert hall, Isaac, from you. Okay, now you also have a concert hall. And I'm going to put on a show to make money. So I spend lots of time finding good artists. I spend time advertising the show. And then the concert hall burns to the ground. And I don't pay you rent. And again, you sue me. Do I have to pay you rent?
Well, I guess in this case not, since the concert hall burned to the ground.
Well, but what's the difference between this and the previous case?
So did you buy the concert hall for me, or did you rent it?
No, I just rented it, but in the previous case, I just rented the building. In Paradigm, I just rented the building, but I still had to pay you because that was just a bad business decision of mine. And here I also rented the building.
But this is not because of your bad business decision, because the concert hall burned. So it's
Well,
not.
I didn't know a German prince would invade that other building. What do you think, Jody? Do I still have to pay him?
No.
Why not? You're right, but why not?
Like the last one is an act of God. Here I can see like the concert hall is burnt.
I think if it's foreseeable, the responsibility is foreseeable or not. This is
It's not about foreseeability. There's no way I could have known some place would burn down. I never would rent a place I thought would burn down. And I never would rent an apartment I thought the German prince would take over.
this is the reason we don't. It's the reason why you won't pay him.
Well, Isaac, in this case, in Paradigm v. Jane, I made a business decision and it didn't work out for me. This is not an act of God, right? This is a German prince. God didn't do this. A German prince did this. In the second contract, it's closer to an act of God. But, and this is Taylor v. Caldwell in 1863. And this is a little different than act of God, but similar. So this is called rule absolute. So Isaac, we made a contract here. And I was going to give you money right? And what were you gonna give me?
The concert hall. For you to
What concert
perform.
hall?
My concert hall.
I don't see a concert hall.
Right, because it burned down.
Oh, so what are you gonna give me?
Nothing.
Right. So we don't have a contract. So it's a little bit different than an act of God, because we made a contract that obviously, again, it had an implied condition. The condition, I mean, look, we didn't need to say that I'm renting this building from you on the condition that the building stands. Nobody rents an Airbnb or a hotel with the condition that the building will stand. Of course, the building should be there. If the building is not there, yeah, you're excused from the contract. You don't have to pay because you're not paying for anything. There's no building.
So if you have already paid and it burns, has Isaac give you the money back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is all of those cases I can notice like is like the essence, you know, like the core condition or the main condition is the same as the guy who wanted to see the marathon, because the marathon is concealed. The main condition is missing. The same, right?
Sure. These are all implied conditions. Yeah. Now, let's say, Florian, I want to make a contract with you. I will sell you a unicorn and a time machine for $1,000. It's a very good deal. And we sign a contract. And then I never give you the unicorn or the time machine. Can you sue me?
For lying to me, maybe, but not for not honoring the contract, because you cannot.
Why?
I can sue you for scamming, but not to not honor the contract, because it's impossible.
Oh, it's impossible. Well, a unicorn might be impossible. But what if you believed a time machine was possible? And I was a scientist who'd been studying it my whole life, and I went to Harvard.
Mhm.
So I'm not a fake. I have a PhD from Harvard in quantum mechanics, and you paid me for this time machine, and I didn't deliver it. Can I say it's impossible? Did you believe it was possible? I guess that's why you paid me. You wouldn't have given me money if you thought it was, not possible. So there was a case where the United States government tried to buy a computer. This is silly. It's not that fast, but in the case of United States v. Wedge-O-Matic, this is in 1966. In 1956, the United States government was looking for a computer system. This is 1956. And they offered the contract to this company, Wedge-O-Matic. Wedge-O-Matic said that they were going to build this incredibly fast computer for 1956. And there was no way they could do it. The technology wasn't there. So at trial court, they found for the United States. Wedge-O-Matic appealed, and at the Supreme Court, this is the Second Circuit, so the Court of Appeals, it was affirmed. And what the court said is there's a difference between impossibility and impracticability. So here's a new word. It's not that something is impossible. Some things are impossible. Other things, it's not that they're impossible, it's that they're not really realistic, they're impracticable. And again, why is this impracticable? Because of the occurrence of a contingency, the non-occurrence of which was a basic assumption on which the contract was made. And that is a kind of legal way of saying an implied condition. So think of the concert hall in the previous example. You and I both believed that this concert hall would still be there, right? But there was a contingency. The hall burned down. And the non-occurrence of this was a basic assumption. We both assumed that a fire would not occur. That was our basic assumption. So the same thing here is an implied condition. I open up a company.
David,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't understand the result of it.
Okay,
Like
so
in the burn case, the guy didn't pay the rent, right? Okay, so in this one, the company didn't give the computers and didn't receive the money. Is it?
They had to pay back they lost. They had to pay it back because they made a deal that wasn't impossible. It was impracticable. If it was impossible, like there was no, concert hall, well, then there's nothing. The contract's not about anything. Here, what they found is performance isn't impossible. It's just never going to happen because there was this basic assumption, this implied condition. What was the condition here? Right? In one case, the condition was that a prince is not going to invade. What was the condition here? The condition was our technology will be good enough to make this computer. That's what they assumed, but they were wrong because the human technology was not good enough. So it's like if I pay you, let's say I pay Elon Musk, I pay him $100,000 for a ticket to go to Saturn on one of his rockets. Well, can he go to Saturn right now? No. So what if we plan to leave in 3 years and then in 3 years, he still is not ready with the technology? I get my money back. It's not that it's impossible to go to Saturn. We might go there someday. It's just he had this basic assumption. He assumed that the technology would be good enough. He was wrong.
Can
So
you
he's
get
gonna have
more
to give that
money
money
from?
back.
Can you get
I
more
can
money?
sue him. I can sue him for breach of damages, a breach of contract, and I can try to get damages either, but the question is, what are my damages? If I paid $100,000 for this ticket to go to Saturn, what did I lose except that money? I mean,
Time?
if I did time, what time have I lost? What I was gonna kill myself if I can't go to Saturn? I mean, well, I'm still here on Earth. What's the problem? I didn't lose anything. If I did lose something, then I can sue him for it. Sure, anything you lost. Okay, so I open up a company.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry. So with the German prince, the person renting the apartment still had to pay because he had an obligation to the landlord, right?
Yes, because that was more of a bad business decision.
Yeah, but with the band guy, it's because the doctor said he couldn't play, right? Because he was depressed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Right, that's not a bad business decision. There's no way he could have known. Now, if it was foreseeable, like if that kid had been depressed for a long time and made a contract and he should have known that he wasn't going to be able to honor it, then they could have sued him. Okay, I open up a company to fix roofs. And the contract says all the tiles on the roof must be the same color. But I take lots of different colors and I make the roof look like a fun picture. And the man refuses to pay me and I sue him for payment. Harry, will I win?
No, because the contract says you didn't do what the contract said.
Okay, imagine this is your roof. And I go up there and I do fix the roof. Now it doesn't leak anymore, but you said all black and I used a bunch of different colors. And you don't want to pay me anything. And I say, well, Harry, you got to pay me something. I did do work. Will you pay me anything?
Yeah, because you fixed the problem. You fixed the leak. So
Okay, good.
pay for it.
Now, what can you withhold is however much it will cost for you to hire someone to make it all black, right? That was the contract, was it'll all be black. I put on some gray or yellow or whatever. Hey, the roof does work. I did some work. And according to the doctrine of substantial performance, you do have to pay me something. In this case, the trial court awarded just a little bit of money, right? Because this was the difference between the amount promised and the cost of a new roof. So, the person did work, they do get paid, but they'll only get paid a little because it is going to cost a lot of money to go back up there and change the color. As a roofer, I make a contract with a local town government to fix the roofs on 25 homes in 8 months for 15 grand. However, some of my employees suddenly quit. I'm also having trouble buying the supplies I need. It takes me 24 months instead of 8, and it costs 30 grand instead of 15. I say the contract was frustrated due to lack of labor and supplies. Carlotta. I say it was implied, right? We keep talking about this idea that there are things in a contract, like in a hotel room, it's implied that you have hot water. You don't need to say it, it's just implied. And when I made this contract with the town, it was implied that I would have enough labor and supplies. Do you agree?
Yeah.
You agree? Yeah.
I don't agree.
Well, Carlotta, you there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let me change the example. I buy 1,000 men's shirts from your company. And then I tell you, I am not going to pay you half of the money. And you say, what? Why? And I say, well, I couldn't find enough customers. And I believe it was implied in our contract that I would be able to find enough customers. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I guess, yes.
Okay, so I can buy things from you and then just pay you part of the money for them?
And no, but why? How can it be implied in like a supplier's contract that you will find enough customers? Like the supplier just supplies. They don't
You're
know how many
right.
customers they have.
You're right. It's not implied. That would be a very tricky thing for me to say. Of course it's not implied. This is business. You sold me the shirts. It's my job to go find customers. It's not implied that I will find enough customers. Well, what about in this case? I'm a roofer and I made a contract. Was it implied that I would have enough labor and supplies?
No.
No. No, it's not. There's nothing in the contract that says, no, if anybody quits my company, I will demand more money from you, town, because I expect nobody to quit my company. I mean, what does the town know? They don't know if people, maybe I'm a terrible boss. So, of course, no, this is not frustration. You cannot recover, and here's this phrase again, in quantum meruit. Isaac, what is in quantum meruit? No.
Oh, we just talked about it.
Yeah, we did. Anybody tell me what's in quantum meruit?
When you can be paid for the work that you've done. You can always be paid for the work that you've done.
Good. You can always be paid for the work that you've done. But they said this is not a case where you can always be paid for the work that you've done. He made a contract. He made a contract for $15,000. Okay, we give him $15,000. That was the contract he made. Oh, it took him longer and more money? Well, I guess be more careful next time. In this case, he made a contract to build 28 houses for this amount of money. He said it would take 8 months. It actually took him 22 months and it cost him more money. And the court said, sorry, you made a contract. That's just a bad business decision. Okay, so now we've talked about how you terminate a contract. Performance, breach, part performance, substantial performance, frustration, hindrance, or act of God. Now let's talk about remedies. What do you get if you sue someone and you win for breach of contract? Well, again, it's, this isn't going to be super surprising. Damages there are two kinds of damages. You know this, direct and indirect. What are direct damages, Min? Min, you there?
Yes.
Okay. I do prefer cameras on, if at all possible. Min, what is direct damage?
Pay with money.
Yeah, they're both money. What's the difference between direct money and indirect money?
Direct is like something you can prove with the bills.
Good. Good. Something you can prove with bills, receipts, anything with an exact number. So then what's indirect?
Pain and suffering.
Well, okay, I can read that too. What does that mean? At least tell me the difference. What's the difference between pain and suffering?
Direct is like you have the actual bills, how much that is cost.
Yeah.
But direct is like, how do you say? You cannot prove it like the actual bills, but.
Okay. There's no
suffer.
exact number.
Yeah.
What's the difference between pain and suffering? They're different words. They mean different things. What's the difference?
Suffering is like it will affect you in the future too.
Okay, but if you break your hand today, won't that affect you in the future?
You cannot do works.
Okay, but don't get confused. If you can't do work, that's direct because your work has evidence. You know how much money you make. You can look at your taxes or your pay stub. You can see how much money you make. There is evidence. There is an exact number. If you break your hand, you're going to experience pain, right? What does that mean? You're going to experience pain.
It's hurt.
Okay, physically. What is suffering?
Mentally.
Yes, mentally or emotionally, right? So let's say that you love to play piano and you break your hand. Well, of course you experience pain, definitely. But if you can't play piano anymore, maybe you also experience suffering. What if I love to play video games? It's my favorite thing to do. And I break my toe. Well, I'm definitely going to experience pain. Am I going to experience a lot of suffering? Probably not. I can still be at home and enjoy playing video games. I don't really suffer. I mean, it hurts. That's pain. Pain is physical. You get more money for suffering, of course, because suffering could last your whole lifetime. Pain does go away. Suffering sometimes doesn't. There are two kinds of damages, though, that we haven't talked about before that we need to understand, because this definitely is something I expect on the final exam. The difference between expectation and reliance. So when you're asking for damages, when you're asking for money because someone broke the contract, let's go back to my example with Jordan, where I'm going to buy 1,000 cases of beer. So Jordan, I'm going to buy 1,000 cases of beer from you. we said $100 per case. Okay, so it's $100,000. And of course, I'm not going to drink 1,000 cases of beer. This isn't for me. I'm going to sell them. And I have contracts with Harry's store. I have contracts with Nicola's store, Jody's store, Min's store. I have contracts with stores all around Shanghai to sell your beer. Now you're selling me, Jordan, you're selling me the beer. It's $100 for a case of it. So let's say you're selling it to me. I don't know how many are in a case. Let's say there's 100. So you're selling it to me for $1 per beer. And I am selling it to Isaac for $3 per beer. Of course, I mean, this is business. I'm making a profit. I'm buying it from you, from Jordan, for $1, and I'm selling it to Isaac for $3. Now I'm buying 1,000. Let's say 1,000 cases, whatever, 100 each, so 100,000 beers. And I'm paying Jordan $100,000. If Jordan breaks the contract, how much money am I losing? Well, Jordan will say David is losing $100,000. David promised to pay me $100,000. So, okay, here, David, is your money back. That's what Jordan's going to say. This is low. But it does put me, I'm innocent, and it puts me back where I was before the contract was established. And we should remember this language from torts. Right? So I get my money back. We're all good. What am I going to ask for, though? I don't want 100,000. What do I want?
Because you.
300.
Nicola,
Yes.
I want 300,000. Why? So Jordan says, why do you want 300,000? That's not fair. You only paid me 100,000. Why should I give you more?
Because this is your revenue. It's
It's my
you didn't make
expected.
the.
It's my expectation. I expected to make money. And because Jordan broke the contract, I didn't just lose that money I spent. I lost those expected profits. So I don't want the reliance. I want the expectation. I don't want to be in the position before the contract. I want to be in the position I would be if the contract had been completed. Now, the reason that this is important is that when you are writing contracts, you can put this into your contract and you can say, in the case of breaking a contract, party A will receive expectation losses. Now, if Nicola or Jordan or whoever signs that contract and then says, oh, I didn't know what that meant. Well, why didn't you ask someone? Oh, well, I thought it meant that you just get back your money. Well, sorry, you should have asked somebody. You signed it. You had Jordan had the opportunity to read the contract. He had the opportunity to ask a lawyer if he had any questions. He didn't. So now I get the expectation losses, and there's nothing Jordan can say. He can't say, oh, but I didn't know. Well, you should have known. It's your contract. So I think it's quite important. There's certain clauses that are very important to know about so that you don't get tricked and so that you can put them in your contract. Another clause that is important is the language clause. And this is important for you guys because you're going to be doing business in, across languages. What happens if you make a contract with a business in China and the contract is in English? So let's say that I make a contract with Nicola's company. Nicola, you have a Chinese company that you sell lamps. Okay, you sell lamps, and I make a contract with you, and our contract is in English. Is that our contract?
Is your version, maybe, pardon.
The contract almost definitely is in Chinese. And what we just signed, that's what's called a mere translation. Can translations be wrong? Of course, they're often wrong. Maybe the quality was spelled wrong. Maybe the size, the height, and I try to sue you. And I say, hey man, you sold me these lamps. It all says gold and you sold me silver. It all says 5 feet and there's only 5 inches. And you say, oh man, look at the Chinese contract. That one's correct. It says that there's silver and 5 inches. You should have looked at the real contract. So here's what you want to do. You want to make sure that in your contract, you write, this English version is the contract. Anything else is a translation. Or the English and the Chinese version of this contract are equally binding. You know, both of those things are fine. But if you don't write anything, you open yourself up for the possibility that you're just signing a translation of something you never even read. You didn't read the original one in Chinese. And you can't say, oh, but I didn't read Chinese. You had the opportunity to get a translator and you signed it. Another one is the law clause, that if you don't specify, let's say I sign a contract with Florian's company and your company is based in Venezuela, but we signed the contract in China. And I think that we're using Chinese law because we're both in China. We're in Shanghai when we signed the contract. But we're not. We're using Venezuelan law because that's where your company is. It doesn't matter we were meeting in a hotel in Shanghai or we were at a trade show in Shanghai, not unless the contract says this contract will use the law of China. If it doesn't say that, you don't necessarily know. And here's the problem. If you then break the contract, I want to sue you. Well, now either I have to go to Venezuela or I have to hire what's called a proxy. I have to hire a lawyer in Venezuela to sue you for me. But it's going to be very hard. And this happens a lot in China, that people sign a contract thinking that, oh, this will be decided using American law. Just because it's in English doesn't mean anything. It's going to use Chinese law. And you better be careful because they could say it's going to use the law of Uganda. You can say anything in a contract. If the Chinese have a good contact in Uganda and they want to make it really hard on you, they can have that in the contract, no problem. If you signed it, hey, you should have read your contract.
In the contract, they already mentioned which laws they will apply. This is already mentioned. This is not implied, right?
It should be clear. If it's not clear, then you use the law of the place where the company was incorporated.
Okay.
However, you might be able to argue that you should use the law of any country where the product is sold a lot. So even if it's a company in Germany and they sell BMWs, you might be able to sue them in other countries too, because other countries make money from selling BMWs. They make money from taxes.
But this one I didn't understand. So for example, I'm from France. I have a contract with Germany, but the most BMW are sold on the USA market. I will use the law from USA.
Well, you'd use the law from Germany, but you might be able to argue that Germany is what we call forum non conveniens, which means it's not a convenient place. It's not convenient for us. So let's meet in America because you sell lots of BMWs in America, so you must have an office there.
Oh, okay.
Also, I mean, if you're selling that much in America, you have to have some lawyers and an office. How could you sell that much in America and say it's not convenient? It must be convenient for you. Look how much you're selling there. You must have an office. You're lying if you say it's not.
I also have a question. How do you calculate the expectation losses?
You must have some contracts with other businesses that would say how much money you were going to make. Now, let's say that I was buying this beer from Jordan. And I do not have contracts with other businesses to say how much I'm going to make. But Jordan's beer is very popular. We could still go to court maybe, and the court would decide what's the average sales price of his beer. Well, the average retail price is $3. So that's probably what I would make. The court can do that even if I don't have evidence. It's easier if I have evidence. There's one last clause that I want to mention here. So there's a couple of clauses that I've mentioned putting into contracts. There's the language clause. There is the law of the country clause. There is this expectation loss clause. And there's one more that I think is very important called a superiority clause. And that says this contract that we're signing today replaces any earlier contracts. You know, because when there's negotiation, I sent you a contract that said $1 million and you crossed it out. Then you sent me a contract that said 200,000. I crossed it out. Then we go back and forth with these things. At the end, when we made a negotiation and a deal and I signed a contract with Jordan, what if then I tried to break the contract and I said, no, this isn't the real contract. Look, this one from last month where Jordan said I would pay 50 cents a bottle. That's the real one. And Jordan says, no, that's not the real one. The real one is $1 a bottle. I say, no, look, we have 6 different contracts. We've been talking for months. You know, you don't want that. You want a clause, a sentence in your contract that says this is the final version. And the important language there is to say this replaces all previous contracts, or this supersedes. It's a superiority clause. Okay, now I know that's a bunch of different stuff. There's 2 other things we can put in contracts that I definitely need you to know, because this is going to come back again and again and again for the rest of this semester, this requirement to mitigate. So what is a requirement to mitigate? Well, the innocent party must proactively and reasonably attempt to mitigate her losses rather than wait for the losses to accrue. Let's think of this in terms of employment law, which we'll learn a little later this semester. So let's say, Aruni. Aruni, you have a company. Okay, you have a school, and I am a teacher at your school. And we get in a big fight. Okay, you tell me to go get a haircut, and I say, no, I'm not going to. And you say, well, David, you have to or you're fired. And I say, you can't do that. I hate you. You're not my mom. And we get in a big fight, and I decide you fire me. Now, can you fire me because I didn't cut my hair? I'm going to say, no, you can't. I want to sue you, Aruni. So here's what I do. Aruni, I go home and I watch Netflix for the next 9 months. I just hang out. I order expensive food and watch Netflix, and then I sue you. I sue you for a year worth of salary. Is that fair, Aruni?
No, I don't think so.
So what I want, my damages are super high because I haven't worked for 9 months now. I just sat at home waiting for the damages to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And when they were like 1 million RMB, then I sued you. What's wrong with doing that?
You should find a job instead of just making your loss like even a bigger loss.
Yeah, and that's what the word accrue means. Accrue means to get bigger. And that's what this rule means. You're right. You're not allowed to wait for your losses to get bigger. Now, we haven't seen this before because previously we learned torts. And in torts, this really isn't an issue. This never happens. When people are hurt, they go to the doctor. But in contracts, This happens all the time when people are angry at each other. Let's go back to my example with Jordan. So Jordan, I bought this 1,000 cases of beer. Oh, it's pretty late. We started, oh my God, we're almost at 2 hours. I just love to talk about law so much. So much fun. Don't make me stop. Okay, we'll take a break after this example. Okay, Jordan, I bought 1,000 cases of this beer from you.
Okay.
And what was I just gonna say? I just lost my train of thought.
Loss accrued.
I'm angry at you now. We got in a fight. You dated the girl I like. So I'm angry at you. Okay? So I want to punish you. So here's what I do. I do not. Lost my train of thought. Okay, so you sell me this beer and you break the contract. You don't sell me the beer. You break the contract and I'm going to sue you. And I expected the beer. So I already had contracts with Nicola and Florian and Min and Ping Ping. And I have contracts all around Shanghai to sell your beer. And then you broke the contract. So I'm going to sue you. And I sit at home and watch Netflix. And Nicola calls me and he says, David, where's that beer? And I say, sorry, man, Jordan's a terrible guy and he didn't give it to me. And Florian calls me and says, David, where's the beer? And I say, sorry, man, Jordan, it's all Jordan's fault. And Ping Ping calls me and Min calls me. They all call me. And I say, sorry, man, it's all Jordan's fault. And then I sue you, Jordan, for all of this money I've lost from Nicola and Florian and Min and Ping Ping. Jordan, is that fair? What should I have done?
I think it's fair because you can sue me and you can get your expectation that you get from them.
Maybe, but what could I have done?
To inform them early.
Yeah, maybe. Is there anybody, what's something I could have done?
Find someone else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Find another supplier.
Find another supplier. Because Jordan, you hurt me and I want to hurt you back. But the problem is I'm hurting Nicola. I'm hurting Florian. I'm hurting Ping Ping. I'm hurting Min. I'm hurting all of these other businesses by not giving them the beer that they need. What if I could just find another supplier who sells your same brand of beer? Let's say that I was going to buy it from you for $100,000 and I want to sue you for everything. So I'm going to sue you for $300,000. But what if I could have found another supplier? I could have found Aruni. Aruni sells this beer, but her price was $120,000. So what should I have done? I should have bought it from Aruni, given it to all the, honored my contracts with Nicola and Florian and Ping Ping and Min and everybody, and then sued Jordan for the difference. But I didn't want to do that because I wanted to make Jordan suffer. And the court doesn't want that to happen because then you're using the law to punish someone. And in the process, you're hurting a bunch of different businesses. So we have a requirement that in any situation where you're going to sue someone, you have to make your losses as small as reasonably possible. I don't have to call every supplier in the world, but I have to call some. I can't just sit around and wait. Now, one last thing is liquidated damages, and we'll take a break. This says that if we want in the contract, we can agree beforehand what the damages will be if you break the contract. So let's say with Jordan, we write in the contract, Jordan, if you break the contract, you pay me 500,000 RMB. Okay. We can write that in the contract. And then now we don't have to go to court about it. You know how much you owe me.
Really? We can?
Why not? As long as it's reasonable.
Yeah, but this means anything actually reasonable.
No, I mean, I cannot say, you promise that you will lend me your bicycle, and if you change your mind, you owe me $1 million. I mean, that's not reasonable.
Mm.
It's got to be reasonable. Now, the time when you see these the most is in a construction contract. So let's say, going back to my example where I forget who was going to fix my apartment. I think it was Junpyo was going to fix the bathroom and the kitchen and the living room and the bedroom. Now, let's say Junpyo and I make this contract and it'll take you say 6 months. Now, we all know that contracts for construction sometimes take longer than expected. How are we going to measure what my damages are if it takes you 7 months, 8 months, 9 months? There is some suffering. There's no pain. It doesn't hurt my body, but there's some suffering that goes on for, if you can't live in your apartment. So what a lot of people do in construction is they say, for every day you're late, $100, $500, whatever. You just pick a number, we agree on it. And you say, okay, every day I'm late. Now, if you're late 100 days, now we know how much you owe me. We don't even have to think about it. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break now. It's a long time. Okay, we are recording again. So let's continue. We talked about requirement to mitigate. We talked about liquidated damages. And we already know this idea, which is still very important, that damages must be foreseeable, that you cannot be responsible if you couldn't have seen the damages. Now, as we said before, for remedies, we're pretty much just talking about damages. In contracts, it's rare that we talk about specific performance. It's possible. What is specific performance? Can someone tell me? Remember, there are two kinds of damages, two kinds of remedies. There's damages and equity. And we'll talk about equity in a second, but can anybody remind me? What is specific performance?
Is it injunction?
Well, that injunction is different. Injunction is another kind of equitable remedy. So, okay, we'll wait. We'll get to it in a second. Let's look at this first. I love to get drunk. So I'm going to save my salary and buy lots of liquor. And I sign a contract with the Happy Teacher Liquor Company to supply me with 1,000 bottles of whiskey by December 31st. The price goes up, however, in August. And let's see who's selling it. Harry, you're selling it to me. So Harry, you decide you can't honor the contract now because it's August and whiskey is too expensive already. So I sue you in court, but you say I have an obligation to mitigate. What does that mean? I have an obligation to mitigate.
I think to change.
Not change, we just discussed it. Harry, what does it mean?
Like, it was to do with like, I can't remember the example. Like if you was out, like if you sustained losses, you have to like do something about it. You can't just sit around and just wait for the losses to like
Get bigger.
more. Yeah.
Sure, that's right. So if you have losses, you have to do something about it. You can't just sit around and wait for your losses to get bigger. That's the requirement to mitigate. So I had this contract with you to sell me whiskey on or by December 31st. In August, the price already went up. And you say, sorry, David, I can't honor the contract now. And I say, come on, dude, it's August. You have lots of time. And you say, no, David, it's already too expensive. I say, I'm going to sue you. And you say, no, you can't. First, you have an obligation to mitigate. Do I?
Yeah.
So what do I need to do?
To prove that you're waiting on the time and let it growing rather than working on it in order to
But
reduce.
what do you mean by working on it? In this sense, for this example, where I was going to buy whiskey, what would it mean to make my damages small? What would that involve?
You would find another supplier, but I'm
cheaper
thinking
whiskey.
like this is kind of a market price. So if you go to another supplier, probably you have the same,
Okay.
price.
So you make a good point. Forget about the market price right now. But what it means to make my damages small would be I would go look for other suppliers. Right, Harry, if you're telling me, David, it's August now, it's already too expensive. What you want, Harry, is you want me to go look for another supplier, right? That's what you want. But here's the problem. I don't have to until December 31st. We made a contract for you to sell me this on December 31st. You can't turn around 3 months earlier and say, oh, I've decided I'm not going to keep my contract. I mean, that's what you're saying. You're saying 3 months before, I've decided I'm not going to keep my contract. And now, David, it's your responsibility. Go find someone else. Nah, dude. You're right. I do have an obligation to mitigate, and it starts on December 31st. If you wanted more time or something, you should have put that in the contract. So on December 31st, if you say, okay, David, it's December 31st, I can't sell it to you. I'll say, okay, well, it's now 8 o'clock in the morning and my party is at 5. Okay, I'll take an hour now and call some other people. Oh, it's already New Year's Eve. Everybody's sold out. Sorry. Because what Harry's trying to do is he's trying to make me do his work. So an obligation to mitigate, the point is, an obligation to mitigate doesn't happen until there are already damages. The facts here are the same. It wasn't whiskey, it was bourbon, but same facts. There were no damages until December 31st. That's when the contract should have been performed. Now, as I said, it's usually not common to have pain and suffering for a contract. That's much more common for a tort. Obviously, if you make a contract with somebody, there really is no physical pain. That's not really a contract's idea. You don't get physically hurt when someone breaks a contract. It's possible you might suffer, maybe, but it's very rare. The kind of case where you might suffer would be a case where you make a contract for something you love and then you don't get it. So let's say I love to cook Chinese food. So I decide to borrow money and open a small Chinese restaurant in a shopping center. And I love this shopping center. I've always wanted to have a restaurant here. And even though we signed a contract, you continue to look for other people to rent the shopping space. You find someone who's willing to pay more than me, and you tell me you're going to break our contract. And you've broken my heart. I sue you in court. Caitlin, will I win? No? Carlotta, will I win? Where are you ladies? Ping Ping, you there? Okay. Min, you're there. Will I win?
I think yes.
I think so too. I should win. Now, in this case, not only did I win, I won suffering damages for emotional distress, right? 225,000 for emotional distress. Because this person broke a contract with me knowing how much I would love to do this. Let's say that, see, Ping Ping, Caitlin, Carlotta, I want you guys to be here. Nope, okay, Aruni. Aruni, you offer me a contract to produce an album of music. And I am so excited. It's my lifetime dream. And you offer me this contract. I just am so excited. And secretly, you're also looking for other people. And you discover Isaac and you think he's going to be a star. And so you contact me and you say, David, I'm sorry, I got to break the contract with you. And I'm going to give the contract to Isaac. And you think it doesn't matter if I sue you because Isaac's going to make you a lot more money. But I could sue you in that case. That would be a case where I could get emotional distress, right? Because that was my lifetime dream and you promised it to me and now you're taking it away. And I might actually suffer. Let's say, Aruni, that you give me a contract to make an album and you want me to make a Chinese New Year album, okay? But then, Aruni, you have an opportunity to work with Zhou Jielun. Do you know who that is? He's super famous. So he's like, yeah, he's really famous. So you want to work with him because he's going to make you a lot of money. So you call me and you say, David, listen, I know I promised you to make a New Year's album, but make a children's album instead. And I sue you. And you say, David, what's the difference? You're going to be a musician. You're going to make an album. You'll make a lot of money. Chinese New Year album, children's album, who cares? Aruni, do you think I'm going to win this? I mean, they're both music albums, right? Aren't they the same?
But children's album and like a Chinese New Year albums is not the same.
Why not? They're both albums. Is one better than the other?
No, but the audience for that album is more wider.
Okay, so are you saying one is better?
I think, yeah.
Okay. What if I could put you in a movie? Okay, I'm a famous producer and I'm going to put you in a movie with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio and we sign a contract. It's a romantic movie where both Brad Pitt and Leo fall in love with you and you have to choose between them. That's the movie. And then about a month before filming, I say, listen, Aruni, I'm really sorry. We changed our plans. We're going to go with somebody else for that movie, but we're still going to give you a movie. It's a movie where you fall in love with a mouse. And it's going to be like a cute love story. It's a kid's movie about you like falling in love with a mouse. Is that okay? And it'll be a cartoon.
Well, I'll still get to act. So I think it's okay.
Can we talk about the cost of opportunity? The opportunity cost story?
Well, it's not so much about the opportunity cost. It's about, now, if Aruni is willing to accept that cartoon movie instead of the romance movie, okay, cool. Sarah Jessica Parker was not. So Sarah Jessica Parker had a contract. Now she's famous for the TV show Sex and the City is where she got famous. Yeah. That's a pretty old TV show, you know, maybe it's before your guys' time, but she was a famous actress. Well, she started, of course, in the industry a long time ago. She was in the industry in 1970. She had a contract for a musical movie. It was going to be this big movie where she would be the lead. And then 20th Century Fox offered the lead to someone else. And they said, listen, Sarah Jessica Parker, instead, we'll put you in a Western movie. Anybody know what that is? They don't even make these anymore.
Yeah. I know.
Cowboys and Indians. And she said, I don't want to be in a cowboys movie. I'm not a cowboy. I'm not a cowgirl. I want to sing and be in a romance movie. And the question is this, what kind of damages can she get? Can they do this to her? And what the court said is summary judgment for plaintiff. She wins. They cannot do this. They cannot change the movies like this. And the reason is, are these the same? Well, as Aruni said, the audience is very different. And how it affects you is very different. She would get the same money, but that doesn't really matter, because what the court said is you can give somebody another job as long as it isn't different or inferior. It's not just that one is better or one is worse, it's that they're really different. Now, there was a dissent, which means one judge disagrees. And he said, there's no difference. They're both just movies. It doesn't make them different. But the rest of the court said, yeah, a romantic movie where you're singing, she was a young woman. She wanted to get famous. Being in a Western movie doesn't show her talent. Being in a singing movie shows the world her talent. So those are damages. But as we said, there's also equitable remedies. Equitable remedies are things that are besides money damages. So someone said before, injunction. I think Nicola. So what is an injunction, Nicola?
It's a remedy to make someone stop what they are doing.
Okay. So in torts, it's to stop doing something harmful. Now, contracts, an injunction would be stop breaking the contract, right? This might be a case where a company has a lot of money and they break contracts again and again. Remember, for an injunction, it usually needs to be a pattern of behavior. Specific performance was the one I mentioned before. And that's kind of the opposite of stop. That means you have to start. You have to do what you said you would do. What kind of goods or services are these for? What kind of goods or services is specific performance for? Anybody remember?
How do you? Commercial contract?
Unique.
Unique.
Tell me something that's unique in this world.
A painting.
A song
Sure.
maybe.
Sure, songs, paintings. So if you make a contract for a painting, let's say Florian is a very famous painter, and I make a contract to give you $10,000 for this beautiful painting. And then you want to break the contract. You decide you don't want to sell it. If you give me damages, you give me money, can I go to the store and buy that painting?
No.
No, the whole world has one. So it doesn't matter. You can give me $1 billion. I can't go to the store and buy it. I don't want the money. I want the painting. You have to give it to me. Like, sorry, you made a contract. So paintings, songs, anything else? Tell me something more common that is unique.
An event, maybe. An event.
Events, maybe. Well, maybe an event could be unique. Sure, I could see that.
Because
maybe like
the time is like unique, is related to the time.
Sure.
Time.
Sure, there's only one, whatever, 4/20, 2020.
Yeah.
The only one.
Yeah.
Sure. Wine, tea, coffee, tomatoes, spinach, anything that comes from the earth. Because your piece of earth is different than my piece of earth. Well, that's why some wine is very expensive. There are vineyards. If it was easy to make Chateau Margaux, everybody would make Chateau Margaux. Why doesn't everybody have the grapes that are required to make Chateau Margaux? Because they only come from Chateau Margaux. I mean, that's a place.
When you say it's unique, because the thing that you say is the replica. You know the cru? The cru?
The
it's
Grand
like,
Cru.
Yeah, it's not one bottle. It's like maybe 10,000.
Sure, but it's still, that is unique. It's not, so when we say unique, we don't mean each bottle. I mean, each bottle is a little unique. We mean maybe that harvest is unique.
Yeah.
But the Grand Cru wines are definitely unique. And if I made a contract with you to buy some, Lafayette Rothschild or something, some expensive wine from your vineyard, If you give me money, I can't go anywhere else. If you have a small batch, it doesn't matter how much you give me. I can't go anywhere else and buy it. You're the only place in the whole world that made it. So it's totally unique. And so is tea, like some of the very, very expensive tea in China. So that is what we use more often in contracts. Torts is more often to stop someone. Contracts is more often specific performance. Rectification is to fix a contract. Like if you made a mistake, you accidentally wrote 1 extra 0, something like that. That's just to fix a contract. So I decided to start a beer company. I rent a factory space. I sign contracts with different suppliers for all the ingredients I need. And I signed a contract with your farm to supply me with barley. The crop isn't ready yet. It'll be ready in a few months. And then you tell me you're not going to sell me the barley. You're going to sell it to someone else. Can I sue you for a specific performance? Is barley unique? Anybody know what barley is?
Oh, gotcha.
What is that?
It's a plant. It's like wheat.
Oh,
Are plants unique?
I think it's
Yeah.
unique.
Yep.
Unique.
unique.
Sure. So this was actually a case, Curtis Brothers was a case about tomatoes. But yeah, all vegetables, any plant, anything that comes from the earth is unique.
Even milk.
It depends how the cows are raised. If they're grass-fed, then yes.
What? Okay.
Well, because if they're grass-fed, then they're eating the grass that is only there. The grass on your land is different than the grass on any other land because there are different things in the soil. But if the cows are fed with chemical stuff that I could make or you could make or we could buy it, you can buy dog food in a bag. It depends what what you give the cows to eat.
So the court will not consider any substitute, right?
I mean, it depends if a substitute is possible.
Mm.
In this case, a substitute was not possible. This was an output contract.
Mm.
So the plaintiff, Curtis Brothers Company, they were going to buy all of the tomatoes that Mr. Katz produced. And then Mr. Katz said, I'm not going to sell them to you. And they said, well, but we need them. They had a business making tomato sauce. They said, we need all this. We need all of the tomatoes. And so what the court can do, so how does the court do this? What does the court have a judge go and pick tomatoes? I mean, what does the court do? So what the court does is, this is an injunction and a receiver will be appointed. What that means is they will arrest Mr. Katz. They will put him in jail for like an afternoon or a month or however long. It's his own fault. So they're going to put him in jail. They're going to hire someone. A receiver is like a manager. So the court will hire a manager. The manager will go hire workers to come in, harvest all the tomatoes, clean them, do whatever has to be done. Then, ship them all to the Curtis Brothers. And when this is done, we'll let Mr. Katz out of jail. It didn't have to be like this. Mr. Katz could have just given him the tomatoes. But you want to play this game? Okay. I mean, law is enforced by force. That's how law works. If you don't follow the law, then the police will come to your house and arrest you.
How do you call this procedure? Because that's the first time I heard something like this. What is the name of this procedure?
This would be called a receivership.
It's like when you have the ability to deliver something, but you don't want to. The law force.
So there's a general rule called contempt of court. Contempt of court means the court told you to do something and you said no.
Mm.
Now, we often see this in a movie or a TV show where somebody's screaming in the courtroom. Like, I hate you, you did it, I'll kill you. And the judge bangs the gavel and says, bang, bang, bang. If you don't stop talking or if you don't sit down, I'll hold you in contempt. And what that means is If you don't listen to what the court says, we will arrest you. Not forever, not for years, but we will arrest you because the law is backed by force. And so if the law says you need to give me your painting or your car or something, you need to. The police will go to your house. If you owe me money and you refuse to give it to me, I can go to the court and ask for a receivership. And then what they can do is they can send the sheriff or the police to your house to take you to jail, just hold you, while they take your clothes, your silver, your car, auction them, sell them, give me the money, then let you go.
Okay, and if after all of okay, for example, the painting, and if after all of this, the person find a way to not deliver, what's happened?
By the way, anybody who sent me a message, I can't see messages when I'm recording. So you just have to raise your hand or just speak up, just so you know. Your question again was, if you
Okay.
found a way to not deliver the
For
painting.
example, this is a painting. The painting is 1 billion, all right? The contract say I have to give it to you. We find no, okay. The painting is 1 million when we did the contract, but after the price rise to 1 billion, finally I don't want to sell to you the painting, but we had a contract. So I say I can pay the damage, everything, but I will keep it because I will still make profit. And you go to the court. You were supposed to have for 1 million, but I
Yeah, that
keep.
painting belongs to me.
Yeah, but I don't deliver. Anyway, I find
Well,
any
then,
way of the.
I mean, unless you destroy it.
I just send it to someone or hide it somewhere. You
Well,
don't have.
okay. Then I guess I'm gonna sue you for as much as I can.
You
Sure, I
can't.
mean, look, if you hide it and nobody can find it, what are we supposed to do? We
Yeah.
can't dig through your brain, but you will be in contempt of court and there's a very good chance you'll go to prison.
For a certain amount, like
Yeah, for a
not
certain
more
amount
than
of
1
time.
year. Yeah, that's it.
Sure. You think it's worth it? Okay.
Actually, one guy did it, but it wasn't for a painting. It's like
People do it.
he robbed. Banks, like the driver of the money. I don't know how to say it in English, but bank is a company who transfer money physically with some kind of guard, right? Brinks. There's two company in France.
Yeah.
So that was his job. There were two. He find a way to steal and rob the money. He come from east of Europe. So for his half of the money, he went back to east of Europe, liquid cash, and came back and went directly to the police.
Yeah, I mean, there are movies about things like that, sure. And if you want to go to jail and just plan to come out and keep the money, you can.
That's
You
what
just
he
have to
did.
hope. I
He got
understand.
3
I
years,
understand.
3 years for robbery without any.
Let's continue. Let's continue with the topic. Okay, so we talked about specific performance injunctions. Now, how would an injunction happen in contracts? So let's say that I have a candy store in a shopping center called David Loves Candy. And I've had this store for almost 40 years. And in my contract, it says the managers will not let another candy store open. I'm going to have the only candy store. However, the new owners have decided to open another candy store. This would be the kind of case where I would ask for an injunction for a contract, right? I'm asking them to stop because what they're about to do is they're about to break the contract and I want them to stop. And if there's some reason that I want to have the only store of this kind, in this case, it was a pharmacy. And if you want to have the only store and you made a contract saying you would have the only store, there's no amount of money they can give you that will fix the problem. You know, maybe it's not about the money. Maybe it's about you having the only store there. Okay. The last one is rectification. And as I said, that just means to change the details or the terms of a contract. Okay, rectification is just to change the details or terms of a contract. And then we are done with contracts part 3 and done with contracts completely. So good. Now I'd like to get a little bit into agency and we have some time, so that is good. We're on schedule. Okay, so far in this class, we've talked about, we have talked about torts and we have talked about, torts and contracts. And these are torts and contracts are both areas of the law that involve two people. Now we're going to get into areas of the law that involve three people. That's going to be the difference now. Now, agency is more like vicarious liability. It deals with responsibility for another person. And we will, towards the end of this, actually review vicarious liability because you will need to know that for the final, even though that was part of torts. And I won't test you on much of torts. So what is agency? So here's first the definition. You don't need to write this. I'll give you a more simple definition, but let's just look at the big one first. So an agency is a kind of agreement. That's the first thing for us to understand. It's an agreement. So it's a kind of contract. So now we've already gone through the biggest things in this class, which is torts and contracts. Now everything else we talk about is really a kind of tort or a kind of contract. So this is a kind of contract. It's an agreement. And it's where there's two parties. There's a principal and there's an agent. And the agent is going to do some business for the principal. And qui facet per alium facet per se in Latin means whatever you can do for yourself, an agent can do for you. Anything in law, pretty much anything that you can do for yourself, an agent can do for you, except contracts that require you to be in person. So for example, I could not get an agent to teach my class because I have a contract that says, I, David Warner, teach my class. I can get an agent to sign a contract for me or to transact business for me, but to perform a service is a little bit different. A lot of services tend to be personal. So here's the definition I want you to know. An agency contract is when one person acts on behalf of another person. That's the definition I want. When an agent acts on behalf of a principal. So agency is quite important because it affects partners, and we're going to talk about partners a little later in the semester. It affects companies. We're going to talk about companies later in the semester. But agency is a big part of being a vice president, a senior manager, a CEO, one of the high-level people in a company. You are usually an agent. Now, I am not an agent of CIP, but Yiling is. She's an agent. And that means she has certain rights and powers. Now, let's say that I want to open a company in China. And this is a very common reason to get an agent. Carlotta, are you there? No? How about Caitlin?
Yes.
Caitlin, have you ever had an agent?
Yes, my family and I use a travel agent.
Okay, and what do they do?
So he's a Chinese travel agent. He's lived in China. He's worked in China for the past 20 years, and he helps us find deals on flights out of Shanghai.
That's good. Have you ever used a real estate agent to help you get an apartment?
Oh, me not personally, but my parents
Okay.
have probably had.
Sure. Have you ever used an employment agent to help you try to get a job?
Oh wow, no.
Nope. Okay, so those are probably the three most common kinds of agents. Other agents you might use, maybe when you're a little older, would be financial agents, like to buy insurance or to handle your finance or your stocks. Or if you do any sort of contract negotiation, like if you do modeling or sports or television or publishing or fashion, anything like that, you'd probably have an agent. Now, generally speaking, any business that you can do, you can get an agent to do for you. And the most common kind of agency, the one that you see the most in the world, is called a power of attorney. And this, you might see it in movies. Probably all of you had to sign one to go to CIP. So a power of attorney is a document. I mean, that's what you need to understand first. It's a document, and it will allow someone to take control of your affairs. Let's understand a few kinds of powers of attorney, because they're pretty important in the world. Now, let's say that I run a business in China. Okay, so I have a business in China, and I'm a little afraid because right now, I'm in America. What if I can't get back to China? Now, my friend Jody lives in China, and Jody's a good friend. I trust him a lot. Now, right now, Jody can't go to the bank and take out my money because he's not me. It doesn't matter if he has my bank card, he's not me. And he can't really go and sign a contract with some of, I have a big restaurant in Shanghai, and he can't really go and sell my food to places because he's not me. He's my friend. And I don't want him to have to do this, but I'm a little afraid, what if I can't get back to China? So let's say I want to make a document that is going to make Jody my agent, but not right now. Right now, I'm still good. Okay, I think, but if I can't go back, let's say in January, then I'm going to have a problem. So I want to make a document today about January 1st. How do I do that? Well, there's two kinds of, why is this highlighted? That's weird. There's two kinds of powers of attorney, non-durable and durable. Now, durable, the word durable in English, the word durable in English means not easy to break. So a durable power of attorney is very broad. Now, let's say that I say in this document, I say on January 1st, Jody will become my agent as durable power of attorney. That means anything I could do for the business, he can do. There's no time period. It doesn't say 1 week or 1 month. It's just until I come back. Now, people often do this on incapacitation or maybe death. But usually this means like if I get sick, if I'm in the hospital, if I'm in a car accident, this person automatically becomes my agent. And an agent can do a lot more than just business. An agent can make all kinds of decisions. Let's say that I have a child and I'm divorced and I want to make sure that my child is taken care of. What happens if I'm in the hospital or I'm in some car accident? So I make a durable power of attorney with Jody, my good friend, that says if I go to the hospital and I cannot answer the phone or make decisions, boom, Jody's in charge of my daughter. It doesn't have to be business. Now, what if I don't want that? I am about to make a big deal for my restaurant. I have a big meeting to sell food to the Shanghai Marathon. And the meeting is on January 1st. I'm so worried that I'm not going to be back in China. So if I don't get back to China, I want Jody to do this meeting. but that's it. I don't want Jody running my business. I don't want Jody in charge of anything. I just want him to do this one thing, be at the meeting. That's non-durable. Okay, that is just a set period of time. It could be 1 day, it could be 1 week, it could be 1 month. You write it in the document. And it's usually one thing, one transaction. And then once that's over, the power of attorney ends. So generally, we're going to class these in 2 groups. One is very broad, one is very narrow. But what you're doing with, so this is another legal fiction, and I love legal fictions, but this is a cool one too. If I give Jody power of attorney, in the law, Jody doesn't just represent me, it's almost like he is me. It's this power that makes someone else you legally. He's not me in the personal sense, but in the legal sense of the things that David Warner can do, Jody becomes that, which is a cool thing to be able to do, to give somebody else your own legal power. Now, it could also be special or limited. Special or limited is a kind of non-durable. It's narrow, right? Very narrow. This is usually only for financial or banking, or maybe sale of a property. Now, this happens a lot if you're a lawyer, that let's say that Florian is a rich investor and you're traveling around the world and you want to buy a house in London. You might give me, I'm your lawyer, a special power of attorney to buy that home. And that's it. It's just this one transaction. You can't be there. I'm just going to do that for you. It's even more narrow. In the law, special always means narrow. So it's even more narrow than non-durable. It's extremely narrow. The one for medical, that's a very specific medical power of attorney. And that happens a lot. You know that if you go to the hospital, you have to sign a form that says power of attorney. And it might say, if you cannot make decisions, you will allow the doctor to be your attorney. He will make legal decisions for you. Because, you know, the doctor can't just change a surgery. Doctors can't just decide to do surgery on you. They need permission from you or someone. So before you're going to the hospital, if they're going to put you to sleep, they need permission from someone. What if they put you to sleep and cut you, and then they realize, oh my God, we need to do this other thing? They have to ask someone. They can't just do it. They're not allowed. Florian.
Okay, for this particular example, if I give you the power to do it and I sign it, so it means you are not liable for any negligence during this operation, right? Because I sign it.
Well, remember our rules about incorporations of exclusion clauses. You can never say, if I'm careless and I hurt you, it's not my fault.
Mm.
You know, what if you give me power of attorney and then you go to surgery and I say to the doctor, cut his ears off. He gave me power of attorney. I'm telling you it's okay. Just do it. I mean, there's a line of what's reasonable. You know, what if I know that you're going in for a simple surgery and the doctor says, well, we found a problem with his heart, but it's extremely experimental. We think it's okay, but if you want, we can do this $1 million experimental procedure. Should we do it? I mean, it depends. If I just say yes to something dangerous, I could still be sued for negligence. Depends if it's reasonable. You always have to be reasonable. Now, it might not be medical or business. It's possible that there are other things. Let's say that Jody, again, Jody, you are my brother. And I have made a lot of money in my life. And Jody, you've never made much money. You've always had trouble with the law. You've been in and out of jail. Jody's the bad boy, just you're a tough guy. You're always getting in fights and, and I want to take care of you, but I don't think you're ready yet. So I make a rule. When you get married, I'll give you power of attorney over one of my bank accounts. It doesn't become yours, because that would be something else. That would be giving you a trust. And we don't study trusts in this class. But I could give you a trust fund, which would be like the money becomes yours. Instead, I'm going to let you invest money. But I don't think you're ready yet until you get married. So on the day you get married, you have a springing power of attorney. The power of attorney becomes effective at a future time when a specific event occurs. It could be any event. It could be China won't give me a visa. It could be aliens come to Earth. It could be you get married. It could be any event I want. I could be something that becomes durable or non-durable. Anything I want. So if I wanted to say, when Jody gets married, all of a sudden you have complete and total durable attorney over a bank account of $1 million, and you can spend it, you can invest it, you can do whatever you want. It's not your money. It's not a gift. It's my money, but you can invest it any way you want. I'll trust you with it on that day when that event happens. It could be it could be on the day one of my parents pass away. It could be on the day, anything. You could choose anything you want. So typically powers of attorney are these three sort of relationships. Either it's medical, it's business, or it's an event that you're giving someone else the power to be your agent. And then the other thing I want you to know, so medical, business, or event, the other thing I want you to know is the difference between durable and non-durable. That durable is the very broad, you are me. You can do whatever. And non-durable is the very narrow, you can only do this. You can do this transaction, or you can only be me for 2 days, something very narrow. Now, other than that, to create an agency relationship, and I won't keep you guys past 10, so I know I only have 5 more minutes. You know, to create an agency relationship, we need 5 things. Let's just get through these. So first, of course, we need the principal and the agent. These are the 2 people. We need mutual consent. You cannot be my agent by accident, right? And we should know that because a contract can't be made by accident. What is that called? Junpyo, you there?
Hello.
Hi. What do we call that in contracts? What's the rule that a contract cannot be made by accident?
1 second, please.
Very OCD about my pens. I really like it when
Mutual
they all.
mistake. Oh, wait.
Sorry?
Misrepresentation.
Oh, well, there can't be a lie. But that is similar. Okay. What I was thinking of was intention to create relations. Right? For a good contract, what are the 5 things we need, Junpyo, to create a good contract? Oh, a cat, I care.
Offer, acceptance, consideration, intention to create relations, certainty of term.
Good. And so mutual consent is another way to say intention to create relations. You can't be my agent by accident. You have to agree. Control, we've seen this word before when we talked about vicarious liability. So we're going to come back and talk about that later on. And then this last one, let's just talk about this and then we'll be done. Fiduciary or fiduciary, you can say it either way. I say it with an SH, fiduciary relationship. You sometimes see this word with banks. That's where you're going to see it the most. But it doesn't really mean bank. A fiduciary relationship is a relationship with a very high standard of care or duty of care. Jordan, what's duty of care? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
What does it mean?
Duty of care, that you are, how to say, in charge of taking care of the others.
Okay. Can you tell me a job that has a high duty of care?
For example, Even the presidency of the country can be duty of care.
Sure. Okay, doctors, sure. Anybody else tell me a job with a high duty of care?
Yeah, and even you also have duty of
Teacher?
care.
Lawyer.
Lawyers have a high duty of care. Sure.
Yeah.
So, with things like your body, your physical health, doctors, nurses, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, all of them have a high duty of care. With things like your money, lawyers and bankers, stockbrokers, all of them have what's called a fiduciary relationship. This is a relationship of extremely high duty of care. The other group is transportation. Bus driver, train driver, plane pilot, they also have very high duties of care. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff for today. Let us stop there. I don't usually give you guys homework in this class particularly. We're getting, what is this? This is week 10. So your final exam, I'll check next time and find the date for you, but the final exam is around week 16. So we still have quite a while. We still have more than a month. So there's nothing to really worry about with that, but we will do a review the week before the final. What I would say now is torts is not going to be a part of the final because I tested you on that for the midterm. I'm not going to put torts on except vicarious liability, which was task D. That comes back in agency. And so that we need, but the rest of torts, I mean, it's good. You have to know what is duty of care. It's like, this is part of law, but I won't test you on it. So for now that we're out of contracts, your homework, if anything, for next week is organize your contracts notes. I guarantee you, I mean, it's almost like half of the final exam. It's like, it's a big part of whether or not you pass this class, how you do in this class is contracts. Organize your notes for next week. Ask me if you have questions. We'll do a review later on in the semester, but we're leaving contracts now. So take this week and do that. Organize your notes. That's my recommendation to you guys. Any questions?
About our quiz number 5, that some of us sent you the part of the coursework. You didn't grade it yet.
Oh, I'll have to look at that. Maybe it was too close to the coursework due date. Was I giving you quizzes in this class?
True.
Maybe I need to give you, okay,
Yeah,
I was
long
giving
time
you
no.
quizzes.
I think the last one was October 28, and the
Okay.
coursework was
I'll add
30.
Okay, I will make a new quiz.
No,
No, we don't need
no,
it now.
that's not what I meant.
You just
No.
want to see the result.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Okay. No quiz this week. No quiz this week. Update your contracts. Harry, you're the host of this now. This wonderful fiasco. Okay, I will see you guys next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a good day.
Bye.
Yeah.